The Round the Isle of Wight Solo, organised by Petit Bateau, was staged on Saturday. The race, with its 30 starters, reflects the increasing interest in single-handed racing and the number of boats that suit single-handed sailors. A force 2 northeasterly and an ebb tide helped the fleet away to the west in easy conditions from a jog start line near Egypt Point. Peter Olden's J92 Solon Goose led the fleet away at the first start, which was for Class 3 boats between 25 and 30 foot and Mini 650s. Along with the 2 Minis, there are a couple of J92s and a Figure 01. Fabian Bates's Mini Blue Gin was performing well even in these light conditions, showing just how potent these small boats can be. At this stage, Blue Gin was neck and neck with the Figure 01 Fluffy. The second start was for boats between 30 and 40 foot, which included a real mixture of boats. Most popular of all were the J105s, with 5 entered in the race. These boats are light, easily driven, and simple to handle for the single-handed sailor. They are also potent downwind with their easily handled asymmetric spinnaker. Mary Fock's unusual-looking 35-foot Q2, designed by Mike Pocock, is a purpose-designed single-hander, and after the start she battled it out with Rory Carter's Daler 36 Catriona, which went on to take 3rd place overall. With light winds and calms persisting throughout the day, the race was shortened at Bembridge Ledge after nearly 8.5 hours of racing. Pete Newland's first 40.7 took 2nd place overall, with a new spinnaker fresh out of the bag that morning. But the overall winner was the boat that started last, as the sole starter in the multi-hull class. Simon Forbes's Dragonfly 800, Scooby 3, beat Pete Newland's on elapsed time by just 11 seconds. There were a few retirements due to the light conditions, including Kate Dickens and her Twister 28, Oliver. Kate had spinnaker problems after the start and was busy sorting it out when we stopped by.
It's alright, you can catch them.
You didn't catch it when it all went up wrong.
No, we didn't.
For more information on the race and full results, visit the Petit Bateau website. The Royal Corinthian Yacht Club organised the final races of the Etchells World's Qualifying Series this weekend. Racing got underway on Saturday, with 22 Etchells coming to the line in a light northeasterly. Lawrence Mead's Freelance cut it a bit fine and hit the pin end buoy. Mead paid his penalty, but Doug Flynn's Wobegon and Niels Razmilovic in Matter 2 were judged OCS and didn't return. That was unfortunate for both. Matter 2 was first to the windward mark ahead of series leader Andy Beadsworth sailing Dawn Raid. In 3rd was Wobegon, the other premature starter. At the leeward mark, Beadsworth had passed Razmilovic and rounded clear ahead of a bunch of 3, which included the premature starters. As boats arrived from behind, sailors struggled to round the mark against the tide and in disturbed air. Beadsworth extended his lead on the next beat and judged the approach to the windward mark to perfection, just squeaking around the buoy in the strengthening tide. At the bottom mark for the final time, Beadsworth was out on his own. Behind him, the pack found it even more difficult than before to get round the mark against the tide. Beadsworth sailed away to take the gun, ahead of Robert Elliott in Bedrock and Richard Merriweather's Take 2. The second start of the day was clean, with Chris Torrens in Best Mate nailing the pin end. Torrens went on to finish 5th to score his best result of the series. The left of the beat was favoured, and at the windward mark it was again Andy Beadsworth who led by a couple of lengths from Niels Razmilovic, with Graham Bailey in arbitrator another couple of lengths back. In 4th came Lawrence Mead's Freelance ahead of Torrens in 5th, who was fending off Ante Razmilovic. By the bottom mark, Graham Bailey had passed Razmilovic but trailed Beadsworth. Astern came Lawrence Mead and Chris Torrens, with Ante Razmilovic rounding out the top 6, who all maintained their positions to the finish. The wind shifted to the right to bias the line to the committee boat end for the 3rd start, causing a logjam of boats to windward of the ley line, where Graham Bailey judged it perfectly. Halfway up the beat, the wind went light, then came in again with a large left-hand shift. Amongst those who did well out of the shift were Ante Razmilovic, who led the fleet at the windward mark, ahead of 1193 Snatch. Among the losers were Andy Beadsworth in 7th, Graham Bailey who dropped to 12th, and Niels Razmilovic in 13th. By the bottom mark, Ante Razmilovic still led from Andy Oddy, while Andy Beadsworth was fighting back, having moved up to 5th at the end of the first round. At the finish, Razmilovic and Oddy held on to the top 2 places, but Beadsworth had climbed steadily through the fleet, grabbing 3rd right on the line and almost catching 2nd placed Oddy. Conditions on Sunday were even lighter than Saturday, and only 2 races were completed, with a long wait between them when the wind disappeared completely. In the first race, Graham Bailey was looking good, but it turned out he was OCS, so the race win went to James Hewell's Gellert, ahead of Lawrence Mead in Freelance. Andy Beadsworth was another caught OCS, and 7 boats failed to finish, including both Razmilovic brothers. The committee boat end was favoured at the second start, but although there was bunching, the fleet was well behaved in the slow speed start, with only 13:29 being over and having to return. Gellert led around the windward mark ahead of Freelance and Beadsworth's Dawn Raid, but it was Beadsworth who was to go on to win the race, with Gellert second and number 9 taking 3rd in a race which only 8 boats finished. The light winds experienced for the last 2 weekends of this qualifying series made life difficult, and with only 40% of the Cowes fleet able to qualify for the Worlds, there will be some disappointed sailors who missed the cut. But at the head of the fleet, it was Andy Beadsworth who finished 11 points clear of Lawrence Mead, with Graham Bailey taking 3rd, ahead of Niels Razmilovic in 4th and Ante Razmilovic in 5th. The Cowes Keelboat Series got underway this weekend, and on Saturday a light northeasterly allowed some racing after a postponement to wait for wind. Division Bell came out on top in the Daring class, with Daring 1 taking 2nd place. Audax moved up the fleet to take 3rd at the finish. With racing set for an hour earlier on Sunday, the Darings and Dragons waited on their moorings as the flags hung limply at the Island Sailing Club. They waited in vain, as racing was eventually abandoned for the day. The Soners did try to get a race in for their spring series. The course, from the Cowes Corinthian Yacht Club, sent them across the ebb tide to Air Canada and gave them little chance of finishing as the wind died and the fleet was swept to the west. For a while it looked as if Bertie had a private breeze, but eventually they too had to retire. Next weekend sees the Flying 15 Jubilee Regatta and the Etchells South Coast Championship. We'll see you then.